Hi there everybody, this is Grant, also known as the Collector 75, and welcome back to another comics review. Right, well for this one I'm taking a tiny little break from the Transformers Marvel UK run, and seeing as Death's Head has just literally been, well, he literally destroyed Unicron and then got thrown into the time stream, I thought I would basically tell you what happened to him after that. We're going to start here. This is the incomplete Death's Head. This is from a little later on after he got turned into Death's Head 2, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. I'm just showing you this one because this was basically a reprint of some of the other comics. I do have them, but it's easy to show in this one because this was like basically a retelling of the entire Marvel UK run of the first series of Death's Head. So anyway, so here's a little artworky compendium of that entire series, and here we have Death's Head 2 arriving at some place, he doesn't know why or wherever, and this place is just literally telling him for some reason the history of the original Death's Head robot. Anyway, we're going to come on to, this is supposedly his first ever appearance. This was High Noon Tex, though the only time I ever remember reading this was actually after his first appearance in Transformers number 113, but there we go. Anyway, so here we go. He's basically just saying that he was in some robot wars, couldn't mention Transformers for some reason. I haven't got a clue why, whether it was to do with licensing issues or whatever. Or maybe they thought if they mentioned Transformers it would put readers off from the character, so who knows. Anyway, so here we are. This is called the Crossroads of Sam. This is originally presented in a Doctor Who magazine and features Death's Head being thrown into the time stream completely uncontrolled, and he basically just runs into the TARDIS and well, finds the Doctor, who is in his, I'm going to say Leonard Nimoy, but it's actually Sylvester McCoy, isn't it? Sylvester McCoy incarnation. And, well, as you can see, this is where Death's Head is still quite a large robot, like a 30-foot robot. And it just goes on to basically tell how Death's Head becomes human-sized. The Doctor here, having a bit of differences with Death's Head, actually just uses the Masters, well, because for some reason he's got it, the Masters tissue compression eliminator device, and use it on Death's Head, and it basically reduces him to human size, and that's it really. Not much else apart from the fact that he then tricks Death's Head and sends him to the year 8162, where we run into the next story, where he arrives in that time, and then it's just where he runs into Dragon's Claws, which was another great UK series, if you can get it these days. Definitely worth picking up, and it's just a fantastic. I'm not going to go too much on the storylines because there's far too much, and I can't really remember them, to be honest, to give an in-depth thing, but it's definitely well worth picking up if you can find it. This was in Dragon's Claws number 5, this one, but it's another great story. Great artwork by Jeff Senior there. Don't worry too much about that. It was a bit of a crazy, incomplete Death's Head. It tried to tie up some of the loose ends from the original Death's Head series. This is actually Dragon's Claws number 5 that he appeared in, as you can see. Let me try and straighten that up for you. I'm not going to get that out, it's basically just the same story. For some reason, this is also written by Simon Furman, of course. He always puts some sort of little speech mark from Death's Head there, and this is, of course, Death's Head number 1. This is where, after being destroyed by Dragon's Claws, this guy Sprat finds Death's Head and rebuilds him and outfits him completely new with an upgraded body, because of course it's in the year 8162, with components far in advance of nearly anything else, which will come into play a little bit later on. And then we move on to the 10-issue series of Death's Head. Here we have number 2, where also guest starring Dragon's Claws there, and then number 3. And number 4, number 5, number 6. These were all great issues, to be honest, and I remember I picked these up. These were some of my first American-sized comics. Fantastic. And here we go. This is number 8, where he goes after the Doctor again because doesn't like the Doctor after he tricked him. There we go. So there's number 9, and then number 9, which is featuring the Fantastic Four, and number 10, where he featured the Iron Man of 2020. After he's got sent, after the bloody hell, where he found the Doctor, got sent to the year 2020, and that was it. I don't know if it was supposedly a 10-issue series, but it always ended up being a 10-issue series. It's said to be continued next issue, but that never actually turned up, and instead we got this, which was a graphic novel, which was a fantastic graphic novel. This is Death's Head, the Body in Question. I got mine signed by Simon Furman there. And basically just dealt with the origins of Death's Head. I'm not going to have to hold this one and show it to you. This is some glorious painted artwork. It basically just went on to tell that Death's Head, for some reason, came from the planet Styrokos, and he was supposedly supposed to be an inanimate body, but someone programmed him with intelligence and then sent him off and threw him into a parallel dimension, which was the Transformers universe, and enlarged him. But that was never really explained. It was sort of explained in the incomplete Death's Head, but doesn't really make sense. I'm not going to tell you the storyline. That it's well worth reading if you've never read that. Brilliant. It just features his dad, which is brilliant, fantastic. And then of course he had a few appearances trying to get the popularity of the character up. He had an appearance here in Fantastic Four number 338, along with Marvel Comic Presents number 76. He was in that as well. And then from there, basically, he went into, well, for some reason they decided to change the character. I haven't got a clue whether Simon Furman agreed with it or not, because they didn't get him to write it after that. This is, of course, the death of Death's Head, where he's destroyed by the minion cyborg, who basically just assimilates personalities. But Death's Head's personality was too much for him, and basically took over control of the robot. And so then we had this guy Minion running around, who then was basically Death's Head. But for some reason, like I say, they got rid of the where he always ends every statement with a question. They got rid of that for some reason. Maybe they thought it was just unpopular. And he wasn't a bounty hunter, he was just an adventurer. Completely changed the character for me, and even though I liked it at the time, because it was still the only then remnants of Transformers that we had, that I collected it, but it was horrible, and I just didn't like it. And it was strange, because the storyline just didn't match Death's Head personality. He was never motivated by revenge, but he was after some fella, and this guy Minion beats him to him, assimilates all his instincts, and then Death's Head for some reason tries finding him just for revenge, and that ain't Death's Head. So it didn't make sense, to be honest. But then it comes along, and I've gone past it now. Yeah, see, this is why I wasn't going to go too heavy on the storyline, but I want to show you the bit where he does get destroyed. There we go. It's on the page before. And there he is. That's where he cuts off his head and assimilates all his instincts. Yeah, it was supposedly popular at the time. It was one of the most popular Marvel UK comics. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't too great. And at the end, well, the main villain of the storyline was this guy called William Strucker or someone, who doesn't like the creators of Minion, which was AIM. And basically just uses Death's Head old body, and with loads of magic, and creates this thing called Charnel with himself. Yeah, he creates Charnel with himself, and that's it. And it takes like Death's Head there, or Death's Head 2 rather, to take him down. Not a bad storyline, but not the greatest either, if you want my opinion. And then where do we go from there? Then after that 4-issue series, he gets his own regular series. It ran for about 16 issues or so. And then there was loads of strange spin-offs. We had Death Wreck, Death Metal. And one of my favourites was actually Battle Tide with Death's Head 2 and Kill Power. That was actually a really good series. If you've not found that one, that's worth picking up. That was quite funny. It's drawn by Jeff Senior as well, so that is worth noting and getting if you can get it. It's definitely well good. I believe Death Metal was actually written by Simon Furman. I do have them somewhere, but I couldn't tell you the storyline. I don't think I ever read it, to be honest. And then after that, for some reason Marvel UK went downhill, and then basically just was either cancelled or something like that. But then Simon Furman managed to get his own back for some reason, and he wrote What If number 54. This was what if Death's Head 1 had lived, but if you read the like next issue things that they used to put on the old coming up, sort of like all the different little comics, it did have the other one, which was What If Death's Head 2 had never killed Death's Head. And it just changes the storyline around a little bit, that actually Death's Head managed to escape, and that Strucker didn't use Death's Head body to become Charnel, he used Minion's body to become Charnel, and then Death's Head actually manages to beat him a lot easier than Death's Head 2 beat Charnel, using a completely different way to beat Charnel, which was really, really good. He just used everybody else, and of course was motivated by money, because, well, I'll let you read the story for yourself. It's a really good one, and features the original Death's Head. He was still the best. I wish actually they'd create a figure of Death's Head. That'd be pretty damn good. Only so I could put it in my Transformers, and then you could put him next to Cyclonus and Scourge. And then after that, that was actually the end of Death's Head. But then I think it was about 5 years ago we got these. I've not known any other appearances after that. But this was Amazing Fantasy, number 16 to number 20, which featured Death's Head 3.0. And it was wrote by Simon Furman. I've been trying to read it. I read it when I got it, but I've been trying to reread it to actually tell the storyline. But I've only read the first issue, and you don't really get a lot off that. But I remember reading it at the time, and I wasn't that impressed with it, if I'm honest with you. But that is the story of Death's Head. I know it wasn't as in-depth as I'd probably liked to, but I'd have needed a lot more time, and I didn't want to dwell on it too much, because there's far too much storyline for the character. But just let us say, it's worth reading. And find out if you like Death's Head, especially that it never seemed to make sense, especially like with the origins of Death's Head. Whereas in the body in question, it sort of featured where he came from, and that he was stolen, and for some reason. And then in the incomplete Death's Head, it just goes on to say that Doctor Who stole him and threw him into the Robot Wars. And it just doesn't make sense. If you start reading the body in question, it just does not make sense with that answer. So it'd be interesting to know if Simon Furman actually had that in mind when he wrote that, but it doesn't seem like he'd ever. But anyway, I hope you like this review, and I'll be back soon with to continue in the Transformers comics. Okay, bye for now.